Hi guys, it's Miss Barker from Syracuse Academy of Science and Citizenship. I hope you guys have had a wonderful summer. I'm ready to be back. I hope you guys are as well. We are jumping right into 5th grade Module 1, and our Lesson 1 starts with strong verbs and adjectives. We're going to be talking about personal narratives, and you guys are going to know what that is by the time we're done with all of this. It's an introduction today, so I will tell you a little bit about what it is and how we're going to use it. So let's jump right in and get started. All right, Module 1, Lesson 1, strong verbs and adjectives. All right, so some of the vocabulary that will be used in this lesson is listed right here, and it is ditto sheets, which is a noun, it's paper copies. Cornucopias, wow, whew, it's hard to say. Is a noun also, and it looks kind of like a horn, and it contains food and drinks, and you see it a lot at like Thanksgiving time usually. Abuela, which means grandmother in Spanish, that is also a noun. Resolve, which is also a noun, means determination. Blurted, which means you've kind of like, you said it really quickly. Sombrero, it's a large hat, that's usually Mexico or Spain, and it's a Spanish word as well. Conceded, and that's just meaning like your admitted defeat. So that means like, basically like you're just over it. Like you don't, you have to basically admit that you are not going to succeed at something. Ecstatic, which means you're really happy. I'm ecstatic to be back, and I hope you guys are as well. Piñata, it's the paper mache figure that hangs kind of like on a string, and then you hit it with a bat or a stick sometimes, and the candy falls out. So yeah, those are some of our vocab words. All right, speaking and listening. So today we are starting this lesson, and we're going to learn about the introduction to personal narratives. Okay, so a personal narrative is, make sure to listen because the last question on here says that it asks what a personal narrative is. So it's basically someone telling you a story from their perspective. They give you a story that happened to them, usually a real life story, obviously, and the person who's telling you is the story about them. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a story, and usually your personal narrative paragraphs are usually between 5 to 10 sentences, okay? So first, I am going to tell you something that happened to me. When I was a little girl learning how to ride a bike, my dad let go of the back of my seat, and I rode the bike all by myself. Later in the day, I took my bike to my grandparents' house and went for a ride into the large parking lot. Well, I started going toward the road and couldn't stop. I hit the drain and fell off my bike. I scraped my knees and my elbows up badly. I ended up not riding a bike again for almost a year because I was afraid. I then got over my fear and started riding again. Now, Ms. Barker didn't really put a concluding sentence, which we will talk about in the next slide, and that's what she needs. So I actually left that off because I want you guys to think of how I could end my paragraph with a concluding sentence. So that was a narrative that happened to me, a personal narrative. So again, tell your neighbor, if you're on the phone with a friend, if your sibling is near you, tell them what a personal narrative is. Okay? Pause the video and tell them. Okay, what are 3 personal narrative characteristics from this passage? Okay, well, it's a paragraph about a paragraph is the name of the passage. So let's read it and we'll see. Writers often organize good paragraphs using a common set of guidelines. First, writers include a topic sentence to introduce the topic or main idea of the paragraph. The topic sentence tells what the paragraph will be about. Next, writers include supporting sentences to explain the topic or the main idea. Writers usually include at least 3 to 5 sentences to give the reader supporting details and facts about the topic or main idea. Okay, I accidentally said 5 to 10, so backtrack, and it's actually only 3 to 5, just so you guys are aware, so make sure you listen to that, okay? Including interesting facts and details helps make the paragraph informative and interesting to read. It is important that the sentences stick to the topic. Excuse me. Finally, writers end the paragraph with a concluding sentence. That is the one thing that Ms. Barker left out. I guess I could turn that last sentence of my paragraph into a concluding sentence, right? Okay. Let's see. So using these guidelines, they can be helpful to writing a clear and informative paragraph. When you write a narrative, the topic or main idea introduced in the topic sentence is often the event you are writing about. So, it wants to know 3 characteristics So we know our first one, didn't mean to turn the page, silly Miss Barker. Okay, so the first one is writers including a topic sentence. So that's like your introduction sentence. That's where you start. It's where you tell us what you're about, what you're going to talk about, all of that. Then you have your details that support that main idea. So I talked about scraping my knee, my dad letting go of the seat. Basically, that tells all about learning how to ride a bike. Then your concluding sentence. I could have turned it into saying that I didn't know how to ride a bike when I started, and then I did at the end, right? So that's kind of my concluding sentence for that. But I would have to go back and rewrite that last sentence. So it's good that we're looking at these so we know what to do. All right, let's move along. My first camping trip. This is just another personal narrative. I'm just going to read it so you guys have another outlook on it. I'll never forget the first time I went camping. We drove several hours to the wilds of Pennsylvania. My sister and I squirmed and chattered in the back seat for a whole drive. Our campsite was right next to a beautiful lake, and I was really looking forward to swimming and taking out a canoe. But as soon as we set up our tent, a torrential rainstorm began. It didn't stop pouring all weekend, and my family's first outdoor adventure was spent cooped up in a tent playing gin rummy. I did not experience much nature, but I did have fun and become very skilled at gin rummy. Whew! Sorry, yawning today. I'm looking forward to camping again and hope the weather cooperates next time. So that is from their perspective about their first camping trip. Okay, this is where you're going to pause when we're done, or when I'm done reading this. Okay, let me read it first and then I'll explain it. Take a minute to write down something that has happened to you recently. Now create your own chart that looks similar to this. Fill in your experience on the left and why it was memorable on the right. So we'll look at the first example, first time experience. The first time I ate a jalapeno pepper, why was it memorable? It was so spicy I couldn't talk. I had drank 3 glasses of water, and after that, my big brother was afraid to try one. So that's why it was memorable. Mine would have been first time experience, it would have been riding a bike. Reason it was memorable, because my dad let go and I learned how, but I tried it on my own and I scraped up my knees. So something like that. So you're going to put your little experience here, and you're going to put why it was memorable. You're going to take out your own piece of paper or even a journal, a notebook, anything you have, and you're going to draw this on your paper, and then you're going to send it to me in an email, or we can attach it somehow, or even in Dojo, whichever you prefer. Okay, one more personal narrative. Okay, passage from the first real sun giving day. With new resolve and colored dittos in hand, I approached Abuela that night as she sat at the kitchen table. Abuela, do you know what Thanksgiving is really about? What it really means? Okay, she said without looking up from her notebook. That means, like, what? Thanksgiving, I repeated. She looked up at me blankly and I realized she couldn't understand Thanksgiving in my properly pronounced English. So I blurted it out the most way Cubans pronounced it, as if it were the same name of a saint. Sun giving, Abuela, sun giving. Oh, el dia de sun giving. Yes, what? She asked, and I began explaining. It was because the Pilgrims and the Indians became friends. What are pilgrims? And those black sombreros? She asked, looking over my dittos. We didn't wear those in Cuba. The Prince of Los Cucuyos. The First Real Sun-Giving Day by Richard Blanco. November came around and my teacher, Mrs. Echevarria, handed out some ditto sheets to color for Thanksgiving. The pilgrims' tall hats I colored black, and the buckles on their shoes gold. The cornucopias of squash and pumpkins, all kinds of oranges and yellows. The huge turkey, an amber brown, a turkey, not pork roast like my family always had for Thanksgiving. As we colored, Mrs. Echevarria narrated the story of the first Thanksgiving, enthusiastically acting it out as if she had been there. Then the chief of the Indians told Pilgrim John, we make big feast for you, and Pilgrim John said, yes, let's give thanks for our new friends and our new land where we are free. My teacher seemed to understand Thanksgiving like a true American, even though she was Cuban also. Maybe I thought if I convince Abuela to have a real Thanksgiving, she and the whole family will finally understand too. With new resolve and colored dittos in hand, I approached Abuela that night as she sat in the kitchen table sorting through receipts and making a tally of her expenses. Abuela, do you know about Thanksgiving? What is it really about? What it really means? Okay, she said without looking up from her notebook. Thanksgiving, I repeated. She looked up at me blankly, and I realized she couldn't understand. Thanksgiving, am I properly pronounced English? So I blurted it out in the way most Cubans pronounced it, as if it were the name of a saint. Sun giving, abuela, sun giving. Oh, el dia de sun giving. Yes, what? She asked. And I began explaining. It was because the Pilgrims and the Indians became friends. The Pilgrims made a big dinner to celebrate and give thanks to God, because they were the land of the free and living in the United States. What are pilgrims and those black sombreros? She asked, looking over my dittos. We didn't wear those in Cuba. It seemed hopeless, but insisted Mira, Abuela Mira. I continued, pointing out at the dittos again. They had turkey on the sun giving, at carne, puerco, and plantanos. We are Americanos like them now. In the United States, we have to eat like Americans, Abuela, or else they'll send you back to Cuba. Amigo Joe, she said with a laugh. We're not Americanos, but no one is sending us back. We'll go on our own when the idiota Castro is dead, and not a second before. But Abuela, I don't want to go back. I'm American. I want to have a real sun giving this year, like this, I demanded, holding up the ditto. You Americano. Ha! You're a Cubano. Ooh, can't talk. Even though you weren't born in Cuba, she chuckled. And when this food is in those pictures, I never saw a chicken that big. That's not a chicken, Abuela. It's a turkey. Please, I'll help you cook it, I pleaded, but she kept resisting. I had no choice but to resort to coercion. I told her I wouldn't go buy specials for her anymore at Liberty Mart or big American supermarkets. If we aren't going to Americanos, then why should we shop there? I said. She took a long pause and looked over dittos again before replying. Bueno, let me think about it. She slept on it for 2 days before making a decision. Maybe you're right. Maybe we'll try sin giving, how you say, she conceded with one condition. But I will make carne puerco too, just in case. It was settled that Thanksgiving we could have turkey as well as pork. I was ecstatic. But the pressure was on. I knew I wanted us all to have a real American Thanksgiving. But how? Abuela certainly didn't know, and the dittos weren't enough to go by. I didn't know as much Thanksgiving as I thought I did. I needed help. That week, Mrs. Ikavara had us make turkeys out of paper plates and construction paper. Surely she would know how to prepare the real Thanksgiving dinner, I thought. So I asked her all about it. I know, she told me. My husband's mother does all of the cooking for Thanksgiving. His mother is an Americana. Thank goodness. I can't even boil an egg. Great. The next day at recess, I asked some of the American kids in class what they had for Thanksgiving. Turkey. What else, dummy? With stuffing, Jimmy Dawson told me. What stuffing? I asked. He burst out laughing, thinking I was kidding. It's the stuff you put in the turkey, he tried to explain. Oh, you mean like a candy and a piñata? I proposed. No, dummy. With bread and celery and other stuff. That's why they call it stuffing. He tried to clarify. Oh, okay. I pretended to understand exactly what he meant. Nancy Myers told me her mother always made pumpkin pie. Pumpkin? Like Halloween? I asked, bewildered. Patrick Pinkleton said his favorite dish was candied yams. Candied? Like with marshmallows and hot chocolate? On yams? I asked him. They each described the dishes as best they could, but when I asked them how to make it, they couldn't explain. I don't know, Jimmy said, shrugged. My grandmother makes everything. Great. All right, that is the end of that that reading. So that was a story, obviously, that kind of has some vocab, has some the verbs, it has the adjectives, all that good stuff. Okay, so when we continue, we are going to actually be talking more about the verbs and the adjectives later, I think in lesson 2 actually. And in this lesson, it was just kind of like an introduction to the stories, all that good stuff. So be on the lookout for a few questions on an assessment, and those will be in your Google form. All right, bye guys.